Hi guys, if you read the title, you already know what we're about to be diving into. Why is Hetalia a mature series? What about it really qualifies as mature, and why is that? Well, first off, those of you who have been here long enough know that I've been in the Hetalia fandom since 2011, and it's a series that I still love to this day, even though sometimes the fandom isn't so great. Now, before you start ranting to me about how great the fandom is, let's get back to the point of this video. Hetalia was originally a webcomic started by Hidekazu Himaruya, known to the fandom and internet as Himapapa. It's a comedy series portraying personified countries of the world, particularly set during the First and Second World Wars. But why does Funimation give it a 17+ rating? Is it the dubbing? Is it because the type of humor being portrayed could be taken seriously by a younger audience? What about this useless Italy series exactly qualifies as mature content? First, let's take a moment to think about what kind of age groups actually watch the show. I watched the series when I was 16. I came into the fandom later than most people did, as some had been around from the beginning, some were in between, or even later than I was, because I am now 20 years old, and a lot of the fans are fully grown adults that may even be past their 20s now. But that's not all the fandom is made up of. In fact, there are people under the age of 12 who watch the series and take part in it. But what's really bad about it? It's a comedy series, the episodes are only 5 minutes long, and in school, if you heard of the short skirt rule, long enough to cover everything, short enough to keep your attention, it's a pretty easy and enjoyable series to watch, isn't it? Well, it isn't so much that aspect of it that qualifies it as mature. Instead, it's more of how the work is interpreted by those fans. Over time, there have been many instances of people taking real-world events and Hitaliifying them to make light of them or make them seem funny, and more serious or older fans have outright lectured the people who do that, calling it insensitive. Which it is. Making light of real-world events, especially ones that have to do with very serious topics, are not okay to do this with, and shouldn't have anything to do with the series. But doesn't that contradict things a bit? Some countries deny that wars ever even happened because of what a serious impact it had on real people in real life. So when is it really okay? The problem in the fandom is that you have two extremes. There's the side that makes literally everything Hetalia and has no such thing as decency or moderation, and then there's the overly serious side where you're not allowed to have any fun if you're not being 100% historically accurate their way. Now, I'm not saying everyone is like that, because there are more people that are in the middle and easy to get along with, and share in enjoying the show the so-called proper way. Let's start with that first category, though, the insensitive ones. Now, let me jump off track for a moment here and just say I started learning about world history in middle school in probably 7th grade. In 7th grade, in truth, I wasn't very aware of the world, despite my 3rd to 5th grade geography lessons on the 50 states in the US. In short, I was never really aware of the world I lived in, or what sort of impact anything had on everything else. I didn't know how history affected multiple peoples. In fact, I'm pretty sure when I first learned about world history, I thought that Germans and Russians were bad guys for the longest time, because of how poorly educated on the reality of history I was. And because they only teach us the past and not how things have changed or how to apply them to modern day, when I discovered Hetalia, I still wasn't completely aware of the impact history had, and I was in the middle of failing my AP European History class at the time, if that's my proof. If I wasn't aware enough to understand what the series was really trying to portray at the age of 16, and I still really didn't get it until a couple of years later, then how could people younger than me possibly do the same? Now, I know that people all mature differently, and sometimes, yeah, someone 8-year-old has got it and is more aware of the world than a 50-year-old. It's not like it doesn't happen, and it's not like adults can't be immature too. But the reason Hetalia is a mature series is because it blatantly portrays stereotypes about these countries aside from the history. It's also good to keep in mind that the series is from a Japanese perspective, and with the Funimation dub, it gets an American twist on what sort of stereotypes we see when we look at different countries of the world. Now, what happens when you put someone who doesn't understand the world quite yet, like myself at 16, together with a series like this? You not only get a weeaboo phase that you'll be absolutely ashamed of when you're older, but you find that in your ignorance, you say and think and do a lot of horrible, awful things because you saw a show about countries that portrayed stereotypes, and you now think that the things in the show are acceptable or realistic, when for the most part, they just aren't. On top of the immaturity level, you have that overly serious category I mentioned before, where if you're not accurate and you don't do things a certain way, that automatically makes you either a complete weeaboo or a horrible person, or in some cases, both. But that isn't necessarily the case either. These types of people, I think, are trying too hard to separate themselves from the fans who are like the first category. But you know what? You're not better than everyone else because you strive for historical accuracy in Hetalia. It's a silly series, too. Liechtenstein's army left one day and came back with an Italian friend among their soldiers. How is that not silly or ridiculous? Not everything has to be about the history, and not everything has to be completely accurate. Have you ever read real history? A lot of it is really, really messed up and depressing no matter what country you're from. Not to mention, what exactly is historical accuracy? Go to a different country and pick up a book on the same historical event in your home country, and chances are likely you'll be surprised by the differences. History was written by people, and people tell the truth they hear and believe. It's all based on perspective. I could tell you that historically speaking, we have a good relationship with other countries because we always work together, we're in the same alliances, etc. But the truth is, most countries probably despise mine. And maybe mine even still despises other countries too, I don't know. All I know is that historical facts aren't always facts. More often they're just tellings of the past by some people that's accepted as the truth. So why take it too seriously? Why not just use the silly show to make things easier to understand instead of bashing people who aren't accurate? Either way, should Hetalia be considered a mature series? Well, to a certain degree, yes, I think so. I don't think I'd particularly put an age limit on it, but rather than 17 plus, I'd recommend more of a PG-13 rating because sometimes it's difficult to really be aware of the content behind a comedy series like this. Having an older person around to kind of guide you and help you understand the differences between what's all right in reality versus fiction is probably better served for this series. It's a great show, and it certainly widened my horizons quite a bit after my initial weeaboo phase died down. But I wish that I was a little more socially and culturally aware when I began to get into it, because it would have made things a lot easier. So, what do you think? Do you think Hetalia really is a mature anime? Do you agree with what I had to say about it, or do you have a different opinion? Would you let a younger person watch this show, or would you want to be sure they're a little more conscious of the world around them first? Let me know in the comments if you so choose, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks for watching, and peace out.